So we have the ethical theories and summary. So for these slides or for this presentation, I will give the summary based on the reported by everyone coming from hedonism until the phenomenology. No? So anyway, I will not anymore proceed with the history and development. So most likely the concentration of this lecture is on the meaning or what are the following things, what are the principles under the theory that you have reported. Okay, so firstly, we have hedonism. Okay, so I'll just read it first. So hedonism came from the Greek word hedony, meaning pleasure. So this is the philosophy that explains pleasure as the end of all humans. So the main purpose of man for living is to acquire pleasure. Okay, so in other words, to make it simpler, when we talk about hedonism, uh, hedonist persons, they believe that pleasure is the only good in life, meaning as long as something or an action that will give them pleasure, therefore it is moral. And they think that the only evil in this society is we have the pain, coming from the definition of hedonism. So therefore, the main purpose now, if you're a hedonist person, the main purpose now of hedonist person in living is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. So ganun lang hedonism natin. You maximize your own pleasure and then you minimize your own pain. Whatever you do that you think that will give pleasure to your own self, thus it is moral. So like for example, in our own universal law, diba, we all know that committing crimes is an illegal act, meaning it is punishable by law or it is not accepted by our own society, considering that we have laws, rules, and regulations. No? But in hedonism, as long as the action will give you pleasure, therefore it is good. Therefore, like for example, if you are a serial killer, like for example lang, serial killer ka, and we all know when we talk about serial killers, it's like their pleasure for killing, di ba? If you watch some of the sci-fi movies, mga FBI movies, di ba? In case of mga serial killers, killing is like pleasure for them. And if a normal person would kill, di ba, matutrauma nga. But for a serial killer, no. So, is the act of killing bad? According to universal law, yes, it is bad. According to morality, it is bad. Di ba? But in hedonism, as long as the action gives you pleasure, then therefore that is good. Okay? So, in hedonism kasi, it is more concentrated on the pleasure. And please take note as well that pleasure is very subjective for every person. If that is your pleasure, it does not mean that is also my pleasure. Pwede rin, your pleasure could be my pain, and my pain could be your pleasure. Okay? So that is for hedonism. And there is a question regarding hedonism na medyo naguguluhan. Some of the students are confused when we talk about pain and then pleasure. So the question here is that, is the absence of pain pleasure? Huh? Is the absence of pain pleasure? Or is the absence of pleasure pain? Well, according to hedonism, absence of pain is not pleasure. So please take note of that one. Hindi daw big sabihin that if there is the absence of pain, you are now experiencing pleasure. Why? From what I told you a while back, pleasure is subjective. In some point, even that there is the absence of pain from me, hindi ko rin masasabi that I am experiencing pleasure. Di ba? The same that if there is the absence of pleasure, you are experiencing pain. Like for example, let us say you are a tawag nito, athlete ka siguro and stuck yung katawan mo or you did not train for how many months because of the lockdown. And here comes the competition for the next month. And obviously you need to train, but your body was not ready enough for a hard training. So as you train along, of course there is pain that you are gaining. But you know to yourself, as an athlete, this pain is going to give me the strength, it will develop my body, or it will make me fit as well. So therefore, tingnan nyo, there is the presence of the pain being given to the athlete, but the athlete is feeling pleasure. Why? Kasi nga, it is subjective. So therefore, we cannot tell that it is pleasure if there is the absence of pain. Okay? With or without the pain, pleasure is very dependent on the person. Okay? So that is hedonism. There are different views in hedonism. We have three actually. First one, eudaimonism or eudaimonism, based from the principle of Socrates. So when we talk about eudaimonism, in the view of hedonism, happiness is one of the ends of living. In other words, we live to be happy. Okay? So in the view of hedonism, together with eudaimonism, when we talk kasi eudaimonism, eudaimonism is about knowing the purpose of life. Okay? That is eudaimonism. If you know the purpose of your life, then therefore you are happy. Okay? But in the context of hedonism, with eudaimonism, ang purpose mo daw for living is for you to be happy. Now, what is now the connection of hedonism and eudaimonism? Yan. You can only be happy if you could experience pleasure. Please take note of that one. Hedonism, maximize pleasure. Eudaimonism, we need to be happy. Happiness is our purpose of life. Now, the question here for eudaimonism, paano tayo maging masaya? How are we going to be happy? How did hedonism answer that one? Hedonism says we can only be happy if we are able to experience pleasure. And when we talk about pleasure in eudaimonism, it is more concentrated to physical pleasure. So ano ba yun? What are physical pleasure? Very simple. If you have vices, like for example, alcohol, passion, you are, let us say, mahilig kang mag-billiard and nagbi-billiard ka, you like having bicycles, di ba? Nagbabike ka mag-isa mo, mga sex. So those are physical pleasure, meaning you are experiencing a pleasure that is being intercepted or perceived by your own body. May ginawa ka, and then may ginawa yung katawan mo, and you experience pleasure. So that is physical pleasure. And physical pleasure is more on eudaimonism. Kasi meron din tayong tinatawag na mga mental pleasure, like for example, satisfaction. Let us say, nag-graduate ka. You are a graduate of criminology. Okay, so you're taking up board exam. And after a month, after 2 months, you pass the board exam. So are you happy that you pass? Of course, yes. Is that physical pleasure? Obviously not. That is satisfaction to your own self. So that is another pleasure that is not something physical. Even love, di ba? We all know that love is very abstract. And obviously, if you know that the person that you love also loves you, well, obviously there is reciprocity. Uh, of course, you would feel happy, di ba? So those are physical pleasure. Okay, so next here is we have Epicureanism according to Epicurus. So in the view of Epicureanism, it is somewhat different on how the way we think of hedonism. So in Epicurus, sabi niya dito, the concept of tranquility, when we talk about tranquility, of course, it pertains about quiet and peace. But how do we maintain peace or even tawag nito, harmony in our own society. According to Epicurus, pleasure must be the reduction of desire rather than acquisition of pleasure. So iba naman ang view dito ni Epicurus. Remember in hedonism, sabi niya, maximize pleasure and then minimize pain. But according to Epicurus, no, that's wrong. Ang sabi niya dito, man must live with simple and then moderate lives. Okay? Because ganito lang kasi yan eh. If man thinks of gaining more pleasure, the pleasure of others would be sacrificed. Further, the acquisition of pleasure leads man to greediness, and when there is greed, society will crumble of chaos. Okay. So, anong ibig sabihin ko doon? Sabi dito ni Epicurus, all of us have our own desires. All of us would like to experience pleasure. Lahat tayo gusto nating magkapera. Lahat tayo gusto nating maging mayaman. All of us would like to have everything. Now, in that process, if you observe the society, what will happen? Parang you try to compare pleasure with freedom. If all of us are given unlimited freedom, what will happen to the society? There is no order, meaning there is chaos. Therefore, if there is chaos in society, people will kill each other. So, obviously, if there is anarchy in the society, do you think you will become happy? Obviously not. So, therefore, according to Epicurus, we must not acquire more and more pleasure or even desire, but rather we reduce our own pleasure so that everyone will become happy. Okay, what is the happiness ba according to Epicurus? Everyone could do what they want, but everybody must do what they want. Okay, what do I mean? Dapat daw tayo, we have our own freedom. But the freedom of someone will not try to sacrifice or even to suppress the freedom or even the pleasure of others. Why? Kasi kung gano'n ang mangyayari, there will be chaos in the society. So please take note of that one. Ang ganda rin, no? Ang ganda ng philosophy rin ni Epicurus regarding hedonism. If people will only think about maximizing pleasure, everyone thinks that life is about maximizing pleasure, unlimited freedom, of obviously there would be chaos. And if there's chaos, everybody will not be happy because we are fighting to each other. So therefore, we need to maintain quiet and peace by reducing or a reduction of our own desire. Okay, so that is for Epicurus. Okay, so next here is we have two known philosophers of utilitarianism. We have Jeremy Bentham and then John Stuart Mill. So for Jeremy Bentham, he introduced the concept of quantitative hedonism. So meaning daw ng quantitative hedonism is that if majority of the people would experience that pleasure, therefore that is pleasure. Okay? Ano daw? Okay, ganito lang yan. Quantitative from the word itself, numbers. It talks about numbers. The more numbers that you have, the more the pleasure is being defined. Okay? Masasabi mo lang daw na ang pleasure ay pleasure if many of the people would experience that one as a pleasure. So therefore, if you are the only one who is experiencing something that is pleasure, but for them it's pain, then therefore that is not pleasure. Nagets nyo? Pag ako lang daw yung nakaka-experience ng pleasure na yan, wala nang iba, and then sometimes yung iba pa, they would say that my pleasure is somewhat their own pain. Okay? So that is not pleasure according to Jeremy Bentham. Why? Because it needs the number of the people. The more people experience pleasure, the more the pleasure is being defined. The more pleasure is really becoming pleasure. Okay? So let's have an example. Ay, sige, mamaya para i-compare ko na lang together with qualitative. So number 2 here is we have John Stuart Mill, and he introduced the concept of qualitative hedonism. Kay Bentham kanina, quantitative. It pertains about the number. But here in qualitative, it pertains about the quality of the pleasure. There are two types of pleasure according to Mill. We have the higher pleasure, and then we have the lower pleasure. So in lower pleasure, it pertains about the physical pleasure that we experience. Ano yung mga yun? Sinabi ko na kanina. Sex, alcohol, different vices, and so on and so forth. Higher pleasure pertains more on mental pleasure. Like for example, fulfillment, satisfaction. Nakapasa ka ng board exam. So yun ang higher pleasure natin. So in other words, for John Stuart Mill, it does not pertain about the number. It doesn't pertain about the number of the people who experience the pleasure. Rather, it is actually the person itself who will judge whether the pleasure is really a pleasure. It depends on the quality from the word itself, quality of the action or the phenomenon being experienced by the person. Okay? Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na pag ako lang ang nakaka-experience ng pleasure na yon, hindi na siya pleasure. Kasi, for me, that's pleasure. Still, that is pleasure. So, let's try to compare the two concepts of Bentham and Mill in a public or in a transportation. Okay. So, quantitative hedonism muna tayo. For quantitative hedonism, example, public transportation. So, you ride a jeepney. Di ba? And alam mo, when you ride a jeepney, madami kayo. Very cheap. Okay? So, the jeepney fare is very cheap. I think you can only pay for during normal times no nata, I think 7 or 8, 850. But for now, it's 10 pesos. But still, considering 10 pesos is still cheap, no? Compared with a taxi. Why? Kasi nga, ilan din yun eh. But anyway, remember, everyone is experiencing cheap prices of fare from public transportation. So therefore, since madami ang nag-experience, so many of the passengers are now experiencing pleasure because of the cheap prices being given for public transportation. So that is quantitative hedonism. Why? Because many people, the mass, are able to experience pleasure. So therefore, because the mass are able to experience that one, that pleasure really is being defined as a pleasure. Yung pleasure talaga ay pleasure nga talaga. It is uh, it is proved by the way that people or number of people are able to experience the pleasure that they are experiencing, no? However, sabi ni John Stuart Mill, no, that is not pleasure at all. Why? Because it pertains about quality dapat. It does not pertain about the number. Sabi ni Smil, ganito lang. Okay, sumakay ka ng jeepney. During the normal times, sumakay ka ng jeepney. Walang aircon, ang init-init. Umuulan, minsan uulan, mababasa ka pa pag yung walang bintana. Pangalawa, ang sikip. 'Di ba? Alam mo na yung talent mo na ano, sabi nila may talent yung mga ibang tao na kaya mong umupo sa maliit na upuan na yon kahit yung kunwari nakapatong na lang yung puwet mo, actually hindi rin 'no, para lang mapakita na parang nakaupo ka kahit hindi naman. So ibig sabihin, is that pleasure according to Mill? Actually, you're experiencing pain eh. So, it does not pertain about the number, it pertains about the quality of the pleasure that you are experiencing. Ang init-init, is that pleasure? No, pain yan. 'Di ba? Ang sikip-sikip, nahuhulog na yung puwet mo, nangalay ka na, is that pleasure? No, that is pain. So therefore, that is the argument of John Stuart Mill. It does not pertain about the number of the people who are experiencing pleasure that makes pleasure as a pleasure, but rather it is the quality that you could get coming from the pleasure that will make it as a pleasure. Okay? I hope you're able to understand what is hedonism. Okay. Next tayo. Next topic here is we have self-realization. Okay. So it is defined as it is the self, it is the actualization of human capacities or potentialities. Okay. What do we mean by human capacities or human potentialities? These are the things that you are capable to do. Ito yung mga bagay na kaya mong gawin. Like for example, you're good in swimming. Okay, lumalangoy ka, obviously. Ano mga talents mo? Pwede, pwedeng magaling kang kumanta. Pwede rin siguro magaling kang, you know how to play musical instruments, and so on and so forth. But in self-realization, ganito lang yan. If you're doing what you're good at, and therefore you are self-realizing. Okay? Parang ganito lang yan. Magaling ka sa swimming. Pero, ang sports mo ay chess. So, are you self-realizing? Obviously not. Dapat, if you know to yourself that you're good in swimming, you must be you must be competing in swimming competitions, di ba? And that is self-realizing. You are able to actualize. What do we mean by actualization? Ginagawa mo ang isang bagay that you are good at it. Di ba? You are good at singing. But what are you doing? You are dancing. And you know to yourself that you're not good in dancing. Is that self-realization? No. Why? Because you are not developing your own capabilities, which is supposed to be self-realization. Ganun lang ang self-realization natin. Gawin mo ang bagay na alam mong magaling ka. Okay? And sometimes, sir, hindi naman pwede. Like for example, I am good in singing. I am good in, ano pa ba, playing musical instruments. Sir, hindi naman ako papakainin ng pagkanta ko. Wala namang gig ngayon. Yes, you're right. So therefore, sabihin na natin ngayong lockdown. Let us say, during lockdown, obviously, madaming nawalan ng trabaho. Diba? Especially yung mga singers natin, mga bands natin who are playing songs every time that we go to the bar, but the bars are now closed. And we need to survive. Diba? So therefore, mananaig pa rin yung self-preservation compared with self-realization. Even though we would like to self-realize, we would like to actualize our own talents, but because of self-preservation, we are not able to self-realize. Obviously talaga, that is our own nature eh. We need to survive for us to self-realize. Hindi pwede na sabihin natin, mahuli yung self-preservation. Mauuna yung self-realization. Hindi siya ganon. Kailangan pa rin nating mag-survive before we could self-realize. So obviously, pag ginawa natin yan, hindi tayo nagsa-self-realize. But we are doing our nature in self-preservation. Okay? But anyway, that is self-realization. Ginagawa mong bagay that you're good at it. So you're developing your own talents. So there are different types of self-realization. First is we have self-realization in diversity. So obviously, when we talk about self-realization in diversity, man tries to develop many capacities or potentialities. Versatile person, when we talk about versatile, all-around person. All-around person leads him to confusion of the self-realization. Okay, unahin muna natin dito sa taas. Man tries to develop so many capacities or potentialities. One very good example of this one in self-realization, ikaw yung taong very talented. No? Alam mong kumanta, alam mong mag-swimming, let us say you're good in martial arts, Ano pa, you're good in public speaking, halos lahat na sa'yo na. Di ba? Di ba? Halos lahat na sa'yo na. And obviously, the dilemma there in self-realization in diversity is that nagiging versatile person ka na until such time you do not know to yourself what do you really wanna do. Ano ba ako? Swimmer ba ako? Singer ba ako? So there is now a confusion for these persons who are self-realizing in diversity. Man's meaning of living is for him to do everything. So obviously, nako-confuse ka until such time hindi mo talaga alam kung anong purpose mo for living. You would realize na siguro nga talagang purpose ko ay maging singer, swimmer, martial artist, and so on. Okay? So your own purpose for living is for you to do everything. But another dilemma in self-realization and diversity is that there is a maxim. Sabi niya dito, you know a lot of everything, but you are a master of nothing. Nagets nyo? You know a lot of everything. Alam mo, madami kang alam sa mga bagay-bagay. But obviously, you are a master of nothing. Kasi nga, wala kang expertise eh. Alam mo lang gawin yung mga bagay na yan. Okay? Anyway, that is self-realization in diversity. So, next type of self-realization is self-realization in dominance. So, this is the absolute opposite of self-realization in diversity. So, meaning here, Mon concentrates in developing major or specific capacities. So, he is a master of his own subject. Mon becomes an expert of a certain ability. Mon has clear mind of his purpose of living. So, meaning, uh, unlike self-diversity, you are, sabi ko you are like a jack of all trades. Di ba? You can do a lot of things. But here, in self-realization, you're good in one thing and you are able to develop that one thing. Okay, let us say, you're a swimmer. Swimmer ka nung bata ka. Tinuruan ka ng father mo and then you're developing your skills in swimming until such time, let us say, nagkaroon kayo ng, ang tawag yan, district meet, diba? Tapos nagkaroon ng provincial meet. Obviously, you're able to go to the regional meet because you are really good in training, di ba? Training ka ng training, meaning you are self-realizing in one. Until such time, let us say, nakipag-nationalist ka, palarong pambansa, di ba? And then after that one, let us say you went to ASEAN, and then obviously, naging gold medalist ka sa Olympics. So imagine mo. So therefore, what good in self-realization is that you have a clear mind on what is your purpose for living. Why? Because there is only one talent that you are developing. Unlike in diversity, ang dami mong talent na dine-develop. You're good a lot of things, di ba? Kaya yung dilemma, you're very confused. However, here in dominance, you have a clear mind that I need to become a professional swimmer or I need to become a professional boxer. So therefore, I will only develop that certain talent that I have because I know to myself that is my talent. Okay? That is my purpose. But ang weakness naman ng self-realization and dominance, di ba, hindi naman tayo, di ba, do you know the maxim that man is not an island? Naniniwala ba kayo sa man as an island? Can a man live without others? Obviously, no. Therefore, parang ganito lang yan eh. You're good in boxing, pero hindi mo naman alam magluto, hindi mo alam maglinis. You're not good in public speaking. You do not know how to socialize. Boxing lang talaga ang alam mo. Di ba? Obviously, I would say, parang ano lang yan eh. It will be hard or difficult for you to socialize with people or to communicate with people. And obviously, you need to communicate with the people that you have around you. Kasi hindi naman pwede that boxing lang gawin mo. Makipag-usap pa, makipag-boxing, hindi naman pwedeng gano'n, di ba? So therefore, may mga weaknesses ang self-realization in diversity and even in dominance. Okay? Actually, merong ano yan eh, may parang you would like to know yourself. Like for example, ikaw, hindi ko natatanungin kung whether you are self-realizing in dominance or in diversity. Actually, may technique dyan para daw malaman nyo. According to psychologists, no? I do not know if it's true. Ganito lang yan. Kung ito yung kamay nyo, i-cross fingers nyo siya. Lahat from itong tawag ito, thumb finger ko hanggang dun sa little finger ko. So cross fingers. Once you cross fingers yan, the most comfortable way the most comfortable way for you to cross fingers. Now, if you look at my hand, if you look at my fingers pala, yung thumb fingers ko, ganyan. Okay. I do not know if the camera is a mirror or what. But anyway, to explain, yung left thumb ko is over my right thumb. So nakapatong yung left ko from my right. So ibig sabihin, according to psychologists, kung yung left mo daw nakapatong to your right thumb, meaning of that, you are self-realizing in hulaan nyo kung paano. You are self-realizing in dominance ba or in diversity? According to psychologists, you are self-realizing in dominance. Pag yung left ay nakapatong if your left thumb is over your right thumb, nakapatong yung left sa right, you're self-realizing in dominance. Now, if you're right naman, kung ganito yung most comfortable way mo for you to cross your fingers, yung right is over your left thumb, meaning you're self-realizing in diversity. So meaning, ganito lang daw sa bahay yan. Example ng psychologist. Pag yung right mo is over your left, you're self-realizing in diversity. Parang, okay, pag right over left, kung sa bahay, ganito yan. Ikaw yung taong kaya mong pagsabay-sabayin yung mga gawaing bahay. Like for example, naghuhugas ka habang nagluluto, umiiyak si baby, nag-aalaga ka pa habang naglalaba. No? So you're able to do it simultaneously. Kaya mo silang pagsabay-sabayin pag you are self-realizing in diversity. However, if you're self-realizing in dominance, ikaw yung taong bawal pagsabayin. Dapat matapos muna ito before I proceed with another task. Like for example, kailangan ko munang maghugas ng plato. Hindi, diyan ka lang muna paglalaba. Diyan ka lang muna pagluto. Kailangan mo hugasan tong plato. After ko maghugas, saka ako magluluto. Yung mga labada, diyan lang muna. Kailangan ko muna magluto. So therefore, dapat sag-isa lang. Ayoko yung sabay-sabay. So that is self-realizing in dominance. Now, I do not know if it's true, but some of my students before, let us say mga 50 to 60% would say, sir, totoo nga. Okay? But anyway, I do not know. Just one of my teachers before taught me on how do we tawag ito on how do we know about the personality of the person. Well, I do not know if that's true. But anyway, if it applies to you, then it's good, di ba? Totoo naman. And last but not least is we have the self-realization in desire. So here, man develops specific capacities or interests necessary for achieving his own desires. So self-realization depends on achieving or fulfilling his desire or goal in life. This type of self-realization is the combination of diversity and dominance. So what do we mean by self-realization in desire? Please take note of the word desire. So what is desire? Desire is something that you would like to become, that you would like to experience. Let us say, ano bang desire mo? Gusto mo maging mayaman na tao. You would like to become a businessman. So, the next question there is, paano ako maging businessman? Obviously, what are the means for me to attain the end that I have in mind? Ang end ko, ang goal ko is for me to become a businessman. So ano yung means? Madami. Obviously, you need to enroll with business administration. You need to have a capital. You need to have a diploma for business administration or bachelor's of commerce, di ba? So therefore, you are now developing certain talents that you think are necessary for achieving the goal that you have. Yun ang self-realization in desire. So yung mga talents na dinidevelop mo is being dependent from the desire that you have. Kung ano yung kailangan ng goal mo for you to achieve your goal, those are the talents that you're going to develop. Okay? Hindi naman pwede na sabi mo sa sarili mo, I would like to become a businessman. Pero ang mga talents na dinidevelop mo are not aligned being a businessman. Like for example, may bisyo ka, nagsusugal ka, di ba? So do you think that action is a mean or a talent that will contribute to attaining your goal, which is to become a businessman? Obviously not. Kaya aalisin mo yung pagsusugal. You need to study business administration. Is that in line with the desire that you have? Yes, that is in line. So therefore, those are the talents that you are now going to develop. Okay? Basta, isipin nyo lang yung desire. Ano ang kailangan? What are the actions or the means that I need for me to achieve my own desire? And therefore, that is self-realization in desire. Okay? Okay, next tayo. We have now Stoicism. So, according to history, it was developed by Zeno of Citium. So, what is Stoicism? Stoicism is the teachings of self-control through voluntary abstinence of worldly pleasure. Okay, so the ultimate goal of Stoicism is freedom from suffering. Now, if you Google Stoicism or Merriam-Webster mong Stoicism, from the dictionary would say that Stoicism is being poker face, di ba? Accepting the reality. Well, of course, that's true. But if you go deeper with Stoicism, ang sabi niya kasi dito, you must free yourself from suffering. And when we talk about Stoicism, it is the acceptance of reality. So meaning, if you combine the two, ganito lang yan eh. In Stoicism, if you are able to accept your own reality, hindi ka na magsasuffer. Like for example, you know how to appreciate problem. You are living with the problem. No? Sa tingin mo magsasuffer ka pa? Hindi. Kasi nga, you believe that problem is part of life. You're able to accept the reality. No? Because some people cannot withstand the problems that they are facing. Sometimes in worst case scenario, people are committing suicide because they could not withstand about the problem that they are facing, especially if it is personal. Diba? So, here in Stoicism, you should know how to accept your own reality. Pag meron kang problema, well, accept it. Well, that is part of life. Kasi life, if you're living with the life, I think there's no life if there's no problem in the context of Stoicism. So therefore, you're freeing now yourself from suffering. Why? Kasi nga, there's a problem. And remember, problem is part of our life. And if you're not able to accept that problem, you are not driving the problem with your life, you're not facing the problem with your life, you're not able to face it, then what will happen? You will suffer. But if you enjoy problem as part of reality or as part of your life, well, therefore, there is no more suffering. Ang galing, no? Ang galing ng Stoicism din. The philosophy of Stoicism. Accept the reality so that you are not going to suffer. If you cannot accept the reality, well, you are going to suffer. Ganon lang yan for Stoicism. So, There are four noble truths according to Siddhartha Gautama. And Siddhartha Gautama is also known for proponents of Stoicism, even though it was first introduced by Zeno of Sityo. So, ito lang dapat ang gawin mo daw, according to Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha Gautama is, of course, we know, siya yung Buddhism. Di ba? Sa kanya nanggaling yung mga principles of Buddhism. Well, number one, we should accept that all life has its own suffering. Meaning, all of us have our own problems. No? Number two, suffering rooted from passion and desire. So, very simple. According to Siddhartha Gautama, everyone is suffering because everyone has their own desire and passion. Okay? Everyone is suffering, nagsasuffer ka daw dahil may desire ka at passion. Paano yan? Sabi mo, gusto mong yumaman. Pero, you're not able to achieve the goal that you have. Gusto ko maging lawyer. Hindi ka naging lawyer. Are you suffering? Yes. Gusto ko magkaroon ng bahay, but I am not able to attain the goal that I would like to attain. So, are you now suffering? Yes. Kasi hindi mo na-achieve. Sa tingin mo, nagsasuffer ka ba dahil hindi mo na-achieve? Obviously, no. According to Siddhartha Gautama, from the very start, if you remove the desire that you have, you're going to remove the expectation to your own self. So therefore, there's no expectation to your own self. Hindi mo man nakamit ang goal mo, you're not going to suffer. Kasi nga, wala kang desire. Wala kang passion. Diba? Gusto mo magkaroon ng sasakyan, because of that desire, you're now suffering. Kailangan mong mag-ipon ng madami, kailangan mong mangutang sa bangko. Yan. You are now suffering because you have the desire. That is the root cause of your own suffering. How to remove it? Remove the desire. Live in simple lives. Kung hindi ako makabili ng sasakyan, so be it. If I will not become a lawyer, so be it. I will not put expectation to myself because that expectation will give suffering to my own self if I am not able to achieve the goal that I would like to achieve. Okay? Number three, happiness is freedom from suffering. So therefore, if you remove the desire, there would be no more suffering. If you're not anymore experiencing suffering, what are you now experiencing? Happiness. So, galing, no? That is for Siddhartha Gautama. But obviously, it is hard for us to remove the desire. Kaya nga sabi niya, ni Gautama dito, kailangan natin ng moral restraint and self-discipline are the means for the happiness. How do we remove the desire? So, we have the self-discipline. So, mamaya explain ko yan, ano yung steps ng self-discipline natin. But if you look at the puzzle for the four noble truths of Siddhartha Gautama, tingnan nyo, lahat daw tayo nagsasuffer. And the root of all sufferings came from our desire. Okay? You're not able to achieve that one. You failed on achieving something. So therefore, you're now suffering. Ganito lang yan. Alisin mo yung desire, wala ka ng suffering. Kung wala ka ng suffering, you are now happy. Very simple for Siddhartha Gautama. So, how do we remove our desire? Unang-una, dapat may will ka for you to remove your own desire and temptation. Removing desire is really hard kasi I think not based on science, not based on philosophy, based on my opinion lang kasi even me as your own teacher, I believe that having a desire is nature of man eh. So lahat tayo may desire, di ba? So I think if you're going to remove the desire, you're also removing the nature of man to have desire. But anyway, let's proceed with the concept or the self-discipline of Gautama. Number two, must have the virtues of wisdom, courage, and justice to prevent ignorance which ignorance leads to happiness. Meaning dapat, yun nga, you have the courage, you have the right wisdom, lahat ng uh, all of the attitudes needed for you to realize that you need to remove your desire, yun dapat ang kailangan mo. I know it's hard to do that. But anyway, that is for Gautama. And obviously, if you're able to do that, you are now living in according to nature, which is the nature of man is to live equally. If you're going to rebut, actually madaming rebuttals itong philosophy ni Gautama in terms of self-discipline. He has his own point on the suffering, di ba? Na talagang nagsisuffer tayo because of the desire that we have. But I think that's part of life na rin. And it is the nature of man to live equally. I would say medyo hindi ako sang-ayon. I do not agree or I am not amenable with his philosophy that the nature of man is to live equally. From the very first start or from the very nature of man, I think we are not equal. Not only on our physical appearance, as well as on how the way we think, on where are we located, or even what are the cultures that we have. No? Considering all of the factors in our own environment, even the nature of man, I cannot tell that men are equal. Okay? But anyway, that is for Siddhartha Gaon. Okay, so next here is we have deontological theories or deontology. So it came from the Greek word deon, meaning duty. And in the study, when we talk about deontology, it is the study of moral obligation of man from the consequences of his action. So meaning, what is the duty of man or responsibility of man for doing that certain action? Okay, it is also the moral theory that guides man of the choices he is owed to do. So please take note of the word or the maxim, the means justify the end. So meaning here in deontology, even though you're able to achieve the end that you have, it doesn't mean that is moral. Unlike with Machiavellian. For Machiavellian kasi is, it is the end that justifies the mean. Meaning, whatever you do, as long as you're able to achieve your own goal, then therefore that is good. That is for Machiavelli. So therefore, if you're Robin Hood, what are you doing is good. Diba? You're giving food, you're giving money to the poor. But how do you do it? You're stealing the money coming from the rich people. And stealing is bad. For Machiavelli, that is good. But for deontology, that is bad. Kasi nga, it is the mean that will identify whether the whole story or action is good or bad. Sabi nga natin dito, nagnakaw ka. Even you have a good end, good goal, but you did something wrong or the means that you have used are actually bad or immoral, it will make the end as well immoral. Kasi nga, bawal magnakaw talaga. So that is for deontology. The means justify the end. If all of the means are good, then therefore the end is good as well. Okay, so through mean or choice, it produces consequences. Which consequence serves as the duty or obligation of the agent? Remember, every one of us is given freedom. So all of us have the ability to choose whatever choice that we have or whatever option that we have. You may do good or you may do bad. So therefore, whatever you do, as long as it is part of your own will, it is you who chose the option or the action that you are going to do, you must be also responsible on whatever consequence that might happen to the action that you did. Nagnakaw ka, di ba? So, pinili mo na magnakaw, nakulong ka. Are you responsible? Yes. It is your duty ba to face the consequence of your action? Yes, according to deontology. Why? Because from the very start, you have the freedom for you to choose whatever choice that you would like to have. Okay? meaning obligation or responsibility for the consequence of the action is based from the means or choices that you have chosen. Obviously, lahat ng action natin may mga consequences. Hindi pwede na ang isang action walang consequence. No, that's not true. So lahat ng action natin may consequence. And according to deontology, it is your own obligation, it is your own duty for you to face the consequence, whatever consequence it is, to the action that you have made. Okay? So according to Immanuel Kant, one of the major proponents of deontology, uh, example lang, is we have the right of life. So everyone is given the right of life. But what is the responsibility of all humans? Obviously, you need to respect the right of life of others. And that applies to all dapat. Okay, may right to life ka, may right to life ako, may right to life siya. So, ibig sabihin, hindi kay, okay, we are not going to give violence or even force for the persons who have their own right to life. Kaya nga, yun in deontology, it is our own duty to respect the life of others. And it applies to everybody. It does not only apply to you or even me, it applies to all of the people who are given the right to life. Remember, in the Constitution, everyone is given the right to life. But what is the corresponding duty? Having the right to life, you need to respect the life of others as well. Okay? Kaya nga may human rights tayo. Next, voluntarism. So it came from the Latin word voluntas, meaning will or desire. It emphasized will as the superior basis of human conduct rather intellect or emotions. Will is the desire of man. Okay, please take note of that one. Synonymous ang will at desire. And baka, sir, sabi nyo naman noon sa ethics, when we talk about will is the conscious judgment of man, knowing the consequences, knowing the means and consequences of an action. Okay, so ganito lang yan. Voluntarism is a different school of thought or principle from ethics. Even they're using the same word, it does not mean that they have the same perception of the word that they are using. Okay? Kung sa ethics, sabi niya, ethics is will is the conscious judgment of man for knowing the means and consequences of his own action. But for voluntarism, hindi niya ganun define ang will. Will is the desire of man, as simple as that one. And what is desire? It is your goal to your own life. Whatever you want, what you would like to become, and that is your own desire. So magkaiba ang meaning nila depending on what school of thought you are pertaining with. Are you pertaining in the context of ethics or are you pertaining about voluntarism? So here in voluntarism, will is desire according to voluntarism. Okay, so there are different views of voluntarism. Mauna muna tayo with John Scotus. So according to John Scotus, all actions necessary for attaining your desire are good. So meaning, sabi ko nga, parang the same lang din yan with, ano ba, self-realization in dominance. Remember, in self-realization in dominance, self-realization in desire pala. You would like to become an engineer. You would like to become a professional boxer or swimmer. So therefore, whatever mean or action that you need to do in order for you to attain your goal or desire are good. No? Gusto mong yumaman. But your mean is for you to deal with the drugs. And we all know that being part of drugs is bad. Diba? But here in voluntarism, as long as you're able to achieve the will that you have, and therefore that is good. That is voluntarism. No? That is for John Scotus, I mean. For Immanuel Kant naman, he classified two types of reason or even the will. Okay? So we have the practical reason over the pure reason. So meaning here, if we are practicing voluntarism, if we are practicing our own desire, we must practice or we must use our mind together with our own heart. Kaya nga sabi dito, primacy of practical reason over pure reason. So what is pure reason ba? Pure reason is using your mind alone. So meaning, sabi ko nga kanina, gusto mong yumaman, no? And then, gusto mong yumaman, pero iniisip mo lang, yumaman. Di ba? And sabi yung sarili mo, magnanakaw ako, magdidil ako ng drugs, para nang sa ganon, yumaman ako. That is pure reason. However, if you now combine your intellect together with your own heart or mind or feeling, ganito yan eh. Gusto kong yumaman. What if nagnakaw kaya ako? Hala, sasabihin ng heart mo naman, sasabihin ng feelings mo, kawawa naman yung ninakawan ko. Hala, paano na lang kung makulong ako? So, therefore, minsan, you're not going to do the action. Di ba? Kasi nga, kaya nga sabi ni Manuel Kant dito, if you're doing an action, do not only use your mind, but use the both. Huwag mo rin gamitin yung buong feelings mo kasi nga mahirap din yun. Di ba? Parang nagmamahal ka ng taong hindi mo mahal. Parang ganun lang. Di ba? So, therefore, you need to use your own heart together with your own mind. So, dapat magtimpla yan for you to do, for you to practice your own desire. Okay, next we have Gottlieb Fick. Rational voluntarism. So here, when will or desire manifested from moral realization, this produces good action. So meaning, kung yung desire mo daw is the result from moral realization, therefore it is good. Why? Ano ba ang moral realization? Very simple. It also pertains about morality. You know what's good and you know what's bad. And what are you doing? You're doing good. No? Okay. So, paano bang example niyan? Actually, ang dami nating examples. No? Let us say na lang, sobrang dami. Parang wala na akong maisip eh. But anyway, desire or will or desire from moral realization. Sige, ganito na lang. You know to yourself that your family is experiencing financial problem. Sabi ng magulang mo, anak, wala na tayong pera. So, I think you need to stop for your own schooling. So, ano magagawa mo? Hindi mo naman pwede na pilitin sila. So, ang ginawa mo, may option ka, di ba? Pwede kang magnakaw from other people at pwede ka ring magtrabaho generously for you to gain money to pay your own tuition fee. So, if you are a moral person, if you have the moral realization, remember, anong desire mo? Your desire is for you to finish your own studies. So, yun ang desire mo. Pero, ano yung moral realization mo? What is the morality that you need to do? Magnakaw or magtrabaho? Obviously, you need to work for the money to pay your own tuition fee. So, therefore, according to that action or example, your own desire now produces good action. Why? Gusto mong maging isang, you would like to finish your own studies, but based on morality, you need to work. You need to do good for you to achieve the goal. So, anong ginawa mo? Hindi ka nagnakaw, but rather, you work for your own family. And obviously, or eventually, you achieve your own goal, which is to finish your own study. Nakatulong ka pa sa parents mo, di ba? And last but not the least is we have Arthur Schopenhauer, and he believed that voluntarism is irrational. That's why he called it irrational voluntarism. Meaning, sabi niya kasi, will daw is irrational. Why will is irrational? Kasi nga, will is based on the desire that you have. Remember my example a while back with John Scotus? You are Robin Hood. Diba? You are Robin Hood. Now, you have the end. Okay? You would like to help the people that you have. Hindi na lang. Ang example ko pala kanina with Jan Scotus ay gusto mong yumaman, di ba? You would like to become a rich person or a wealthy person. Now, you have different choices. But for Jan Scotus, whatever you do, as long as you're able to achieve your own end, your own goal, and therefore that's good. Magnakaw ka man, you do drugs, okay lang. As long as you're able to achieve your own desire. Kaya nga tinawag to ni Schopenhauer as irrational. Why? Because the basis of the goodness or badness of the action is based on the desire. If the action will help to attaining your own desire, then therefore it is good. Pero pag yung action mo daw kahit tama, pero hindi naman ito mag-a-achieve or it will not help you on achieving your own desire, then therefore it is bad. No? So, ibig sabihin, parang irrational. Why? Because you're basing the goodness or badness of the action on your own desire. It is your desire that will tell whether your action is good or bad. Or in other words, it is the end that will justify the mean. Kung tama or if you're able to achieve your own end, lahat ng ginawa mo, tama na yan. Even with others, it is immoral or it is not acceptable. Tama pa rin yan sa'yo kasi nga, sabi ng desire mo tama yan. Kaya nga naging irrational ito, according to Schopenhauer. Okay? And last is we have phenomenology. Phenomenology, before we define that one, phenomenon is an event or happening that is important or unusual. Okay? It is a happening or it is an event. Yun lang. When we talk about phenomenology, it is an approach for arriving philosophical truths, which goal is to give explanation and investigation of phenomenon from direct experiences rather than theories. It explains the factors that affect such phenomenon to what happened. Okay? So it answers why and how. Okay, ano ba ang phenomenology? When we talk about phenomenology, ito yung isang bagay that you are able to explain the event coming from your own experience. Meaning, may certain event na nangyari, pero you are understanding the event itself from your own experience without using others' stories or even different theories that might even explain the phenomenon itself. So, paano ba yon? Okay. Medyo mahirap to Okay. So, nagkaroon tayo ng World War I and then World War II. So, obviously, we are not there when World War I and World War II happened. No? If you're not going to use phenomenology, pwedeng sabihin mo na ganito lang according in the theory of power interest and self-interest of states, yun ang cause ng World War II. Kasi nga, what is the power interest of the different states? Everyone or all of the states or all of the countries would like to gain more power. According to that theory, to the power theory of the states, everyone or all of the countries would like to gain more power. Power, what is power? More money, more territory. The more territory that you have, the more power that you could get. So nagkaroon ng World War II kasi madaming countries ang would like to gain more power. So from that example, nakita nyo, I am now understanding or explaining a certain event. Yung event is yung World War I or even World War II. But I am now explaining or even investigating that event using a theory which is the power relations or even international relations. International law, whatever it is, okay, I'm using that theory for me to understand or even to explain on what happened during World War I or even World War II. And that is against phenomenology. No? In phenomenology, you're only going to use the experience of the people who lived during that time for you to understand the event. So, anong gagawin mo? So, tapos ka na sa theory. Tinanong mo yung lolo at lola mo during the World War II. Bakit ano ba kasing nangyari nung World War II? Sabi ng lolo ko, ganito yan. Ito kasi, si Adolf Hitler, let us say, German yung lolo mo, no? And he worked for Adolf Hitler during that time. And then, if I am not mistaken with my diary, sabi ng lolo mo, I worked with Adolf Hitler. When I was working with Adolf Hitler, he is a very ambitious man. No? Siya yung taong lahat na lang gusto niya makuha. Gusto niya ng power, ito. Gusto niya ng pera, ito. Kukunin niya. So, sabi naman ni lola mo, yes, tama. I was a cook during the time of Hitler. Every time that I serve, he always tastes all of the food. If he doesn't want the food, he's going to throw it, and then I need to make another one. So, something like that. So, meaning, kaya pala, sabi mo sarili mo, kaya pala nagkaroon ng World War II dahil tong si Adolf Hitler na to, very ambitious, according to my lola. No? So, what I'm telling here is that you are now understanding a certain phenomenon, a certain event based on the experience of the person who lived during that time or who experienced yung event itself, but not rather a theory coming from let us say, coming from different philosophers na rin and authors na rin who are explaining that theory. So that is phenomenology. You are understanding or you are giving explanation based on the experience of the persons or even the actors during the time of the event. Okay? So, Edmund Husserl is also known as the father of phenomenology. Sabi niya dito, for us to practice phenomenology, there are 3 steps for us to know. Unang-una, phenomenological reduction. First is you need to divide the facts of phenomenon through the use of consciousness or even intuition, recollection, and then imagination. So, example, ano ba yung phenomenological reduction? We need to divide. Okay. So ano yung ano ba 'to? Ano yung magkakasama at ano yung hindi magkakasama? So like for example, tinanong mo yung lolo mo, your lolo worked for Adolf Hitler. Your lola worked for Adolf Hitler. Gamitin pa rin natin yung example ko kanina. However, your uncle, German din yung uncle mo, he did not work for Adolf Hitler. But let us say he was designated or he was an officer to Austria when they conquered Austria or when they conquered France during that time. And then yung auntie mo naman, nasa Amerika siya, no? And he talked about what is happening about Germany during the time nung nasa Amerika siya. And then kinuhanan mo sila lahat ng statements. So you're an investigator. So obviously, you need to divide the facts or you need to divide the tawag nito, you need to divide the information that you're able to get coming from lolo, lola, uncle, and then auntie. So, kailangan mo ba silang pagsamahin lahat? Hindi. Why? Kasi iba yung experience ni auntie mo. Iba yung experience din ni uncle mo because he did not work for Adolf Hitler, no? But for lolo and lola, pwedeng pagsamahin because they work for Adolf Hitler. So something like that, no? You are classifying now different information in order for you to organize the information that you collect. It's not all about collecting information, but you also need to classify it. So whatever information that you need, you're able to pinpoint kung saan mo kukunin. So that is for phenomenological reduction according to Edmund Husserl. Number 2 here is we have now the eidetic reduction. It is now the removal of unnecessary and sustaining essential structure. So meaning, let us say, nag-interview ka na ng dami-daming tao. Let us say 20 persons, mga lolos and lolas mo, uncles and then aunties. You're able to organize. You're able to organize the different information that you're able to gather. But obviously, not all of the information that you gathered are necessary for the things that you would like to explain. Di ba? So therefore, kailangan mong mag-alis ng information that are not part of the topic that you would like to explain. Parang research lang yan, di ba? Search ka ng search. At the end of the day, you're not going to use all of the theories in your own research. So, ang gagamitin mo lang ay yung mga kailangan mo. So, therefore, you need to remove it. And number 3, last is we have the transcendental reduction. It is now for you to compare or contrast the related phenomena happened in the past and may happen in the future. So, dito ka na pwedeng gumamit ng let us say, may nangyari bang ganito noon? Can I use World War I for me to compare with World War II? Pwede. No? And then, in the future, pwede rin. Okay? So, Martin Heidegger is known for the transcendental ego, and it is the analysis of one being from the past to the present. So, sabi niya dito, for you to understand something, you need to go back to the past. Okay? So, World War II ngayon, let us say World War II ngayon, for you to understand World War II, ano bang nangyari ng World War I? What are the cause itself? So, you need to compare for you to know or for you to explain what are the causes or whatever you like to explain about the event that you would like to explain. Okay, so that end our own presentation for the ethical summary of the theories that you have reported.